should say the television series is a dramatization of the true story. I'm not sure if the book is also a dramatization or if that is more of a true story. I don't know. I have not read the book, nor have I seen the show, but I have researched the case of Reena Virk quite a bit, so I'm going to share with you what I have learned. So, let's start with some background information on Reena. She was born on March 10th, 1983 in Saanich, British Columbia, Canada. If I pronounced that wrong, I apologize. She was the eldest of 3 siblings. She had a younger brother and a younger sister. Reena's father, whose name is Manjeet, had immigrated to Canada from India, while her mother, Suman, was born in Canada to an Indo-Canadian family. Unlike the other South Asian families in Reena's community, they were not practicing Sikhs. Her mother's family had converted to Jehovah's Witnesses after they had originally moved to Canada years before. And Reena's father later converted as well. So her family has often been described as, quote, a minority within a minority. And because of this, Reena grew up feeling like an outsider. She could never find any place to fit in. In school where she went, it was predominantly white, and her peers teased her relentlessly because she was a little bit overweight, and she was also from a different race. Reena became absolutely desperate to fit in with the other kids at school, and it has been said that many of these kids were influenced by Los Angeles gang culture. They were a pretty rough crowd, but it was her dream to be accepted by them and become one of them. Now, not only was her life at school very difficult, but she also hated her parents' strict religious rules. In this religion, one doesn't celebrate Christmas or birthdays, and Reena resented aspects of the religion, such as those. She made several attempts to run away from home. And then she came up with an extreme idea of how to escape her rigid home life situation. In 1996, when Reena was 13 years old, she accused her father of essaying her, as well as physically and emotionally abusing her. Now, this was a lie. These were all lies. He hadn't done anything to her. But this accusation led Reena to be removed from the home and placed in a foster care situation, like a group home, which was exactly what she had wanted to have happen. So it worked out perfectly for her, but meanwhile, imagine her family, what they went through, especially her father, being falsely accused of something so heinous. So anyway, while Reena was there living in the group home, she made friends with the type of kids that she dreamed of making friends with. These were troubled kids who drank and used drugs, stayed out late, and always seemed to be looking for trouble. But eventually, after about 2 months there, Reena grew tired of the group home. Reena had stolen Nicole's address book. She had called a lot of the people in the book. She had called a boy from the address book and asked him out repeatedly. And she had begun spreading false rumors about Nicole. Why did she do all these things? I don't really know. But anyway, she was caught, so Nicole knew what Reena had done. So at first, when Reena was invited, she was a little bit like, like, she's mad at me, maybe I shouldn't go. But then she's like, you know what? No, I want to go to this party. It sounds like fun. So she told her parents she would be home at 10 p.m. And she left with these two girls. And they joined a much larger group of teens who were on a field at the Shoreline School. And they happened to watch a Russian satellite explode in the sky at 9:12 p.m. I believe that was unexpected. It's not like they knew that was going to happen. And soon after that explosion, the police arrived to break up the party. But the group did not just go home. Instead, they moved their party to a spot near the Craig Flower Bridge, where they continued to drink and smoke. But at some point, the party turned into a horrific nightmare for Reena. In front of the whole party, Nicole Cook approached Reena and she put out a lit cigarette on Reena's forehead, and she screamed at Reena, and she accused her of spreading rumors and of stealing her boyfriend, or trying to steal her boyfriend. Right after that, 8 kids, which was 7 girls and 1 boy, between the ages of 14 and 16, began punching and kicking Reena. They tried to light her hair on fire. And as she lay there on the ground being assaulted, reportedly she cried out, "I'm sorry." Now, most of the kids who were there, who were not involved in the beating, most of them left. They're like, let me get out of here, right? I don't want to be involved. But, there were a few that did stay and watch. And one of the teens called out at some point and told them, stop, that's enough. And at that time, they did stop. The beating stopped. Reena was very, very injured at that point. But she pulled herself up. She staggered away from the group. She was all bloody. And she started walking across the bridge, headed home. But, unfortunately, 2 of the original assailants were not done with her, and they followed her. That was Kelly Ellard, who was 15, and 16-year-old Warren Glowatsky, the only boy. So the 2 of them got right back at it. They began attacking Reena, punching her, and bashing her head on a tree. Now, we don't know why these 2 kids felt the need to continue the attack. What was their connection exactly? Had Reena done something wrong to Kelly? What was Warren even doing there? Why was he the only boy? Was he just trying to, impress Kelly? Like, we don't know the answers to any of these questions. But regardless, Reena lost consciousness during this attack. But that wasn't enough. Kelly 16 at the time of the attack. He was born on April 26, 1981, in Medicine Hat, Alberta. He had a troubled home life. His mother was an alcoholic, and his father had left the family and moved away to California, leaving Warren behind. At the time of Reena's murder, Warren had been living with a friend. Now, he was ultimately convicted of second-degree murder in 1999 and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 7 years. His first request for parole in 2004 was denied. But while Warren was incarcerated, he showed deep remorse for what he had done. During that time, he discovered that he was of Métis heritage, which means he was a person of mixed European and indigenous ancestry, and this discovery helped guide his rehabilitation. Eventually, his work toward healing led him to meet in person with Reena's parents, Manjit and Suman, and he apologized to them. They actually forgave him, and they told the Globe and Mail, quote, "I think the most important reason why we've forgiven Warren is so we can just put this whole matter aside and for our own healing and sense of wholeness," end quote. In 2010, Warren was fully paroled, and the Virks agreed with that decision. Now, let's talk about Kelly Ellard. Remember, she was 15 at the time of the murder. She was born on August 9th, 1982, and she came from what was said to be a relatively stable, traditional family. The only thing that had gone on there was that her parents had been divorced, but it was still said to be a stable background that she came from. Now, her first trial was in the year 2000, and she was found guilty of second-degree murder. But the Supreme Court of Canada overturned that decision based on a technicality from her questioning at the trial. So she had a second trial in 2004, which resulted in a deadlock jury and a mistrial. During that trial, she still insisted she was innocent, and she had told the jurors, quote, "I am not a monster," end quote. So she had a third trial. I'm guessing she must have had some pretty good lawyers. So the third trial, though, ended in her being convicted, and she was sentenced to life in prison with a chance of parole after 7 years. But she continued to say she was innocent and showed no remorse. She also smuggled in illegal drugs into the prison, and she was not what you would consider to be an ideal inmate, obviously. But finally, in 2016, she admitted that she was guilty, and she was given conditional day parole in 2017, which means she could go out of prison during the day and then come back to go to sleep at night. And that conditional day parole was extended multiple times in the years to come. Sometimes she even was granted, overnight stay outside of the prison. She wound up changing her name to Carrie Marie Sim, and she gave birth to a child that she conceived during a visit with her boyfriend. She gave birth to a second child in 2012. she put out the cigarette on Reena's face, which began the attack. And she talked about how she repeatedly punched and kicked Reena. And at the end of the interview, she denied the accusation that she had anything to do with the actual murder, because she was not charged with murder. So they asked her, quote, "Would the murder have ever happened if you hadn't started the fight by burning her face with your cigarette?" End quote. And she replied, quote, "I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe." End quote. Now, Nicole Cook had returned to the scene of the crime along with another assailant the day after the murder, and they had taken Reena's shoes and sweater, and they brought them back to their group home and forced another resident to hide the items. But that resident had told the staff at the group home, who had reported it to the police. In 2006, a report was published by the British Columbia Coroner's Service, which found that, quote, "social workers failed Reena Virk by putting her in foster care without confirming whether her allegations of family abuse were true," end quote. Reena's mother, Suman, told the Victoria Times columnist that, quote, "These social workers are trained professionals and they couldn't clue in that this child was a total storyteller," end quote. Suman and Manjeet Virk became prominent anti-bullying advocates, and they successfully pushed the government of British Columbia to create a number of anti-bullying programs in schools. In 2009, they were honored with British Columbia's Anthony J. Holm Award of Distinction for their efforts. In the year 2018, at age 58, Suman Virk, Reena's mother, tragically died from choking on her food in a restaurant. And that is the case. What are your thoughts? I will share some of mine. First of all, rest in peace to Reena Virk. She was only 14 years old, and what she went through is one of the most horrifying and scary things that I think anyone could have ever lived through. And would you say she lived through it? I mean, I guess she didn't live through it. Many people have referred to this party as a murder party and suggested that unknowingly Reena was invited to her own murder party as a guest. Do we think that the partygoers really planned on murdering her ahead of time? And was it premeditated to actually murder her? I would say not. It sounds to me as if they did plan on mercilessly beating her. That was part of the plan, and I don't think that they were particularly concerned about how badly they hurt her either. It just wasn't in their plan to murder her specifically. I don't honestly think they even thought through the consequences at all. But obviously there was at least one person who got the sense that they had beaten her too much already and said, "Stop, that's it, that's enough." And everyone agreed and stopped, with the exception of those two people, Kelly and Warren. And they did, or at least Kelly did, intend on murdering Reena. it was Kelly's intention to kill her. No doubt. And when I heard that she stood there in court and screamed, "I am not a monster," all I could think of was, yes, you are. You are a monster. Like, how can you do that to anyone? Even if she stole somebody's boyfriend or your boyfriend or spread rumors, how can you do this to a human being? Only a monster would do that. Now let's talk a little bit about Reena's desperate desire to fit in. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that she was not an angel, okay? So we're not trying to say, she did everything right, she was a perfect daughter. I mean, obviously she had done some pretty bad things, What she had done to her family with that lie was, really, really awful. But nonetheless, she absolutely did not deserve what happened to her at all. Not at all. And obviously, she was very immature. She was only 14, so I do believe that, as the years went on, she probably would have looked back and said, "Oh, I never should have done those things that I did to my parents," I'm sure. I'm not sure, but I think she would have matured and regretted what she did and maybe turned her life around. Maybe, I don't know, but I don't think that she was truly an evil person at all. She was just very mixed up. And the fact that she had been bullied so much probably really had a lot to do with the decisions that she made. If you've ever been bullied, you know how awful that feels, and she obviously wanted more than anything to no longer have that feeling, but instead to be accepted by a group of kids, and she would do almost anything to make that happen. So she made some very bad decisions, but like I said, it was not her fault that this happened to her. She did not deserve this. I'm glad that Reena's parents were able to get something good out of this tragedy. They were successful in promoting an increase in anti-bullying education in the schools, which is extremely important. And hopefully many other kids will be saved from going through what Reena went through in the years to come. So that is all I have for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me.